Shabbat Shalom. I apologize in advance if I make you all a little jealous. Obviously, the best place to be right now is here, celebrating this amazing bar mitzvah. But if you couldn't be here, the next best place to be is over in this program I run for kids twice a month called My Shabbat. It's for 2nd through 6th graders. They have to bring a grown-up. In my day, we called it junior congregation, because I'm old. But when I took over here in that job particularly, I rebranded it, because I was like, maybe the kids will like it more. And it kind of worked, because we get a good crowd now. Of course, the point of junior congregation, or as I call it now, My Shabbat, is to familiarize the kids with a Shabbat morning service. It's only an hour, so it's kind of a shortened service. We get all the basic prayers worked in. They learn the words, they learn the tunes, they learn the choreography. When do you bend? When do you bow? I try to keep it fun and interactive. Remember, it's kids, and it's pretty young kids too. We do crafts. I give out a lot of candy. We play games. I always try to tie something in we're doing to either a holiday that's coming up or to the Parsha, the part of the Torah we read that week. And today, at my Shabbat, on the other side, the school side, the kids are playing a form, I would say, of the game Jenga. You know Jenga, with the wooden kind of blocks, the stack? It's kind of like that, except because this week in the Torah, we read about the story of the Tower of Babel. So I had the kids, I had to arrange all of this. I wasn't there, I've been with you the whole time. So I arranged all it, had all the instructions, and gave it to other people. I told them you have to divide the kids into 2 teams. They have to see who can build their tower the fastest. The first time, they get a set of instructions to their team leader. Each team leader gets a set of instructions, very specific instructions, certain numbers of blocks, certain shapes. And the kids probably thought, this is easy. This is a piece of cake. So they build, they see who's fastest. All right, easy enough. The second time, they get another set of instructions. But they're told this time, the kid with the directions, the workers, none of them are allowed to talk. Oh. The workers can't talk to each other, the kid with directions can't talk. They have to figure out a way to communicate, not by showing the instructions, not by talking either. I think they would have found it challenging. In fact, I actually asked Rabbi Mendelson, who had to run that program for me, how did the kids do on the second time? And he was like, literally, his response was, In the ed world, we call this experiential education, meaning you learn by doing something. I was trying to teach them the story of the Tower of Babel by actually experiencing the difficulty in working together without the basic ability to communicate. I was a little sad I actually couldn't be there to watch the chaos I'm sure I caused. I feel like their eyes probably got real wide. The older ones would have realized how much trouble they were in first. They probably would try to gesture to each other, I'm sure, try to show how many blocks they need, what shape do they need to make, what way do the blocks need to face, I bet the older ones got a little annoyed at the younger ones, because the younger ones would have needed more time, they would have needed more patience, they would have had to have really creative ways of communicating with each other without talking. At the very least, I'm sure it was very amusing for their parents and Rabbi Mendelson and Kathleen who were watching them. Ultimately, I think it's just a more effective way to experience the difficulty of trying to work together without talking than if I just said, hey, you know what, it's really hard to work together when you can't talk. I think it'll really help them internalize the story of the Tower of Babel and the difficulty that does ensue when we need to work together, but we just can't talk to each other. That being said, I think that lesson, that particular lesson, is a little obvious, Luckily, there's another lesson to the Tower of Babel, a next level lesson, and I hope they figured that one out too. If you recall in the Torah originally, apparently, back in the day, everyone spoke the same thing. Kol ha'aretz safa echat. All the world was of one language. Shockingly, this did not lead to world peace. People got together, all right, they did. Unfortunately, they used their combined powers to decide to build a tower up to God and make war on God. Unshockingly, God did not like this plan. Not because it was possible, but because it was rude. God said, okay, well, that's enough of that. Kol shambala Adonai, the Torah says. Right then and there, God confused all the languages of the earth and scattered the people. So when one worker tried to say, hey, what's with the quality of these bricks? It came out in French. And the other guy looked at him and was so confused. He responded in, Thai or whatever. And then the guy who was in charge was like, what are you talking about? But he was speaking in Hindi. It was a mess. It was a mess. The way the rabbis talk about this story, it does seem a little silly. And I do hope the kids got a little laugh out of the experiment. But unfortunately, in real life, it's not actually very funny. Because these days, I feel like we're not speaking each other's language more than before. We, meaning as a Jewish people, we as an American people, really all people, I think we're struggling now more than any time I can recall before to find a way to really communicate with each other, to talk to and listen to each other. With all of our differences in religion, in politics, perspectives of all sorts. And it hurts us. It hurts us personally. We have friendships, we have family relationships that are strained, broken even. I know so many people who are NC, no contact, with loved ones, often because of political differences and perspectives. But it's also on the larger scale in communities in our country. We've separated, I fear, into factions. Them, well, they believe, they say, oh, I can't with them. It makes it really hard for us to see ourselves as a united front when we're so internally divided. But again, I feel like that's the obvious takeaway from the Tower of Babel story for my kids who did my Shabbat this morning, for us here in this room. The difficulty of living in a world where we can't just talk to each other. The kids are going to understand that straight away. You got that straight away. But like I said, it's a bit obvious. And ultimately, I don't actually think that's the main point of the Tower of Babel story in the Torah. I find it very interesting that God never fixes it. God can do anything, right? God can do everything. So if God wanted to, wouldn't God just fix it? Go back to that ideal time before all the scattering of people and the mishmash of languages? Fix it so eventually, we do speak the same language. If not literally, then make sure we all end up being the same religion, have the same values, have the same perspectives. Because isn't that supposed to be ideal? Because isn't it easier? So isn't it better? God never does this. And what's more, God never demands this of us. God never says, never. Our ancient and medieval rabbis, they never teach. We need to look past our differences. We need to ignore our differences. Pretend that we're not different, that we don't have different ways of thinking, different ways of being. Uniformity is not valuable, at least not in Judaism. I think it's probably because we just don't think you're designed to be that way. I taught it on Yom Kippur. I will teach it again. It's one of my favorite stories. 2,000 years ago, the rabbis taught in the Talmud that when people make coins, they have a single stamp. Every single coin turns out exactly the same. Kulan domin ze la ze. Each one similar to the other. But God makes people with a single stamp. Ein echad mehem domeh lechavero. One stamp, but not one person is like the other. God did not create us to be the same. God did not create us to create communities where we all think and believe the same, but to be wildly and beautifully different from each other. When I read as a kid the story of the Tower of Babel in the Torah, I was always taught that when God scattered the people and mixed up the languages, it was a punishment. A punishment. God wanted to punish the people for their hubris, for their defiance. I'm not so convinced now as an adult in the real world. I think it's because something was missing then, in that before time. Something very important, something key to unlocking humanity's true potential, because we were never meant to be a monolith. That is unideal. Remember, this story, the point in the Torah we are right now, we're super early. This is only the second parsha of the Torah. We got a lot of Torah to go. All the greatness of humanity happens after this. Abraham and Sarah and their great leap of faith, they become the first believers, the first Jews after. Joseph saves all of humanity while living among strangers in Egypt after. Moses leading the people to freedom after. The giving of the Torah after. The building of the tabernacle after. Going to the Holy Land and becoming a sovereign nation on our own land after. Everything great we achieve as human beings, we do so as inherently different people who don't speak the same language, who have different religious and political viewpoints, who have sometimes wildly different perspectives. We don't achieve what we do in spite of our differences. I hate that phrasing. It's because of our differences, as God designed us. Particularly these days, I think particularly right now, when our viewpoints on politics and governance and religion are so hotly divisive, the key takeaway is not, oh, the problem is everyone else that is different from me. That's not the key takeaway from the Tower of Babel story. That's not the key takeaway from my kids and their doomed Jenga towers on the school side this morning at my Shabbat. It's that when they no longer had speech to rely on, they had to work more closely than they did before. They had to truly pay attention to the greatest of them and the smallest of them. How is this one gesturing? How does this one pantomime? And quickly help those who need it most. In the same way, now that we have this big, great group building project called life, called Jewish community, called America, how are we going to capitalize on our differences? How are we going to join together in full recognition of how we diverge from one another? Use that as an advantage. We can see into each other's blind spots because we don't come from the same perspective. So we can make sure what we are building here together is the strongest it can be. We are at our strongest, we are at our best when we come together, when we love each other with our differences. Work together, bringing our unique perspectives to the table, as God intended it, as we were created to do. We're not meant to live in echo chambers, but to live together in this big, messy group project called life, even when we don't see eye to eye or speak the same language. Our differences are not a flaw. They're by design. They're a gift from God. And we need to remember to embrace them in ourselves and in others as we work to build the best community, the best country that we can for ourselves and for all those who come after us. Shabbat Shalom.